بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So who can summarize for me uh, two or three of the big ideas that we have spoken about in this book or that the author has spoken about? Our,
Um, One thing that he stressed was the importance of not jumping to making takfir or like accusations with other Muslims.
okay, what else? What about historical points?
We talked
Uh,
about how
Go ahead.
the Salafi movement is an extreme reaction to the Ummah's like focus on Sufism, and because like the madhabs are complicated, so the extreme reaction was to oversimplify the deen and to hyper focus on hadith.
Okay, so is the yeah, was the complaint reasonable?
Yes.
Was the reaction reasonable?
No.
no.
No. Right. So that's really important. We spoke about that, right? Last night I gave a talk on a similar kind of thing, and it's fun. Like when you explain things, sometimes concepts come to mind. Like one of the issues is cynicism about the past, right? That somebody doesn't follow them there because they're cynical. Like, I don't really think the scholars were that sincere. They weren't that amazing. I don't really think, I don't look back at the last 1,000 years and have any trust in them. Cynicism. And then the other is actual resentment, right? I had a bad experience with Malikis. I had a bad experience with Shafi'is. I had a bad experience. Like, so you just have this resentment. Like, I don't like that whole thing, right? So it's important. You're talking to people who are resentful, right? You do have to, um, accept. Like let's look at it. Your experience was bad, right? And you're like, yeah, my experience was bad, and that this and that happened. That was actually bad, right? So yeah, yeah, like legitimate. The kind of say like accept what it is, but then say, but should we respond in this way? No, right? Just like someone who leaving Islam. Why did you leave Islam? Ah, the shuyukh, they're all like this. All the politics like this. So yeah, that's true. The politics were pretty messed up. Yeah, what that sheikh did was pretty messed up. I totally understand that. However, is this a real? So you have a legitimate complaint, but your reaction is wrong. Okay, good. What about other historical issues about Ibn Taymiyyah and about Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab?
That a lot of things have been ascribed to Ibn Taymiyyah and Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab that they never said.
Okay, so what about Ibn Taymiyyah? So with Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, you mentioned about I don't label these people as kuffar. I don't say we should follow. I don't say we should abandon the form of their hib. But with Ibn Taymiyyah, what is it? Is it really adding things to putting words in his mouth, or is it something else?
It's not adding to what he said, but it's omitting
Mm-hmm.
things that
So like
he
cherry
said.
picking, right? Cherry
Yeah.
picking which kind of things you want to say like, and you can do that with anybody, right? Oh, Jalaluddin Rumi just talks about love. Yeah, he's also a Hanafi Mufti, right? And he believes in the Sharia and believes this, but you can make anybody into anything you want, right? Right? Just take some words of the Prophet and make him sound capitalist to appease people at some point. Make him sound communist at another point, right? Okay, great. What are other issues? What about praising the Prophet ﷺ and shirk? So when does that become an issue? All you do is salawat on the Prophet ﷺ. All you do is talk about how amazing the Prophet ﷺ was. When does that get to the point of shirk?
It only gets to the point of shirk if you believe that the Prophet ﷺ was capable of something independently
Hmm.
of Allah.
Right. Okay. And what about um, what about asking the Prophet ﷺ to do? Okay, that's going to come later. Yeah. What about asking the Prophet ﷺ to do things or asking the awliya to do things? What is this? How does this work?
Um, I, that's permissible as long as the belief is not like what we said earlier. Like as long as you don't believe that those people or the Prophet ﷺ is can do something independently of Allah.
Hmm. And the same thing with tabarrukat, with relics. Like, oh, look at these people, they have all these saints and these relics, just like Catholics. Say, well, there's a difference. Sorry, the point is that there are such things as tabarrukat, there are such things as mubarak things. Um, the Prophet ﷺ handed out his own hair. That wasn't he wasn't trying to get people to worship him, right? Um, rather is that there was barakah in it. And we believe in barakah. Yeah, this course is a barakah. And we saw many examples out of the Salaf. Right. So the key thing is aqidah is aqidah. So in reality, the depth of that discussion is a fundamental discussion, which is between Ahl Sunnah and the Khawarij. The Khawarij, they say, if you do a major sin, you leave the deen. Right. So therefore, Iman is one thing and Islam is something else. Sorry, they're the same thing. Like if you don't have Islam, if you don't do something right, you aren't something right. Um, so if you do this, whenever you hear somebody saying, if you do this or you say this, you leave Islam, right? They're either talking about in a technical sense, like as a court case, or they're talking about, or they're saying something that's fundamentally off, right? So a Christian is a kafir before they call on Jesus. Somebody who calls on a saint and thinks that the saint can help them independently of Allah is a kafir before they even do it. Somebody who somebody who does tawaf around a grave is a kafir before they even do it, if they believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not legislated it, but it is legislated. Like this is good, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden it. It's like, that they've already done the wrong thing. So the point is you're in your creed. Okay, we spoke about that. What about bid'ah? What did we say about bid'ah?
We said that there's good bid'ah and bad bid'ah.
Okay, and
We also mentioned like examples of the Sahaba
mhm,
radiallahu anhum doing things that the Prophet ﷺ never told them to do.
mhm,
Like I think it was the example of um the two rak'at after wudu that
mhm.
I forgot the Sahabi.
I think it's in Bilal, yeah.
Yes.
But there's many examples out of the Sahaba and the Salaf. Okay, we spoke about that. And then we mentioned with the issue of bid'ah in reality, it's a not understanding the authority of the madhahib. So when you say it's a bid'ah, you're saying it's a hukum shar'i, right? So when somebody comes along and says, brother, this is a bid'ah, don't do it, there's like two or three misconceptions in their mind, right? Number one, this has already been researched for over 1,000 years. There's already a very, very deep and comprehensive answer on it. A, and B, there's actually more than one deep and comprehensive answer. So therefore, if you say it's a bid'ah, you mean a bid'ah according to one large group of scholars, or a bid'ah according to, or not according to one large group. So the proper answer is say, brother, we shouldn't do this. This is a bid'ah according to the Hanafi school, right? Or brother, I advise you not to do this because this is a bid'ah according to the Maliki school. But I accept the fact that other scholars say it's not a bid'ah, for example. So the concept that, so the idea that when people say halal haram and they don't refer to the madhahib, what they're saying is these large bodies of scholars, thousands of thousands of scholars working with a system. A, don't have a system. B, haven't been thinking, and C, haven't done anything. They just sat there wasting time for the last 1,000 years or more. Right. So that's one concept that they're lost on. Another concept is just pluralism. There's more than one answer. That's just totally lost on them. Right. So they say, yeah, I know. That's great. You can talk, talk, talk. At the end of the day, this is a bid'ah. Right. And so there's a lot of those issues that are lost on those people. So it's reality. It's a result of the non-madhab issue. And again, why am I not going to listen to the madhab? I'm not going to listen to the madhab because last time I listened to the madhab, it would just rub me the wrong way. Everything was strict. Everything was annoying. Nothing made sense, right? And not making sense as a reality is kibr, right? That's a pride issue. Like, oh, I studied this book, I didn't understand it, therefore it's wrong, right? That's obviously pride, right? And half of this pride is inherited or shared, right? So you have this attitude issue that, oh, I don't understand why the Malikis do that, therefore it's wrong. Ha ha, look at them, they're so weird. And that idea will be shared, right? Just like, for example, people will share mockery of other religions, right? When in reality, we should mock other religions necessarily. We should mock things that are real about other religions, right? But let's say, for example, oh yeah, I'll give you just an example. Look how stupid Hindus are. They worship mice, right? And then you realize actually some Hindus worship those things and some don't, right? So there was a kind of pride or ignorance in some things of the way that we said things that aren't exactly true, and sometimes actually haram because you're making a statement that's not even true, right? And so it's not really. So there's a lot of these things. Inherited pride isn't quite an important thing. Shared disdain for things. Okay, and then we spoke last week. We spoke about the Ash'aris. What did we speak about the Ash'aris yesterday? And this is what's that got to do with history?
Is it that most scholars were Ash'ari
Mm-hmm.
or Maturidi?
Basically, yeah. So you have a serious problem then when you come along and say all these people are wrong. And so you repaint history as if everybody's like you, but they're not. Nobody's like you, right? And so you quote people and they're not like you. So Ibn Taymiyyah is not like you, Imam al-Dhahabi is not like you, Ibn Kathir is not like you, so and so is not like you, etc. Okay, so now we have a whole other sections to go through as well, just in brief. So all of these, okay, and so is this book a useful book or a useless book?
Useful
Okay, why is it useful?
because it clarifies concepts that most people don't understand today.
Why is
So
it arguably useless? And this person has wasted, or his time, he hasn't wasted his time has been wasted, and our time has been wasted. Why could you argue that his time has been wasted and our time has been wasted?
Because a lot of these notions should have just been understood from
Yeah,
the
and they were
beginning.
understood, right? And it's just somebody comes along and changes thing. So imagine again, you're doing family counseling in 50 years in California, and you're talking about gender, you're talking about gender roles, talking about, and the family doesn't, you're talking about fatherhood and motherhood. So the kids don't even recognize motherhood and fatherhood. They don't recognize gender, right? So there's this whole problem in this family, and it's like this tension, all these things, and it's like when you realize some of these things are just super silly. Like you don't really identify your father, as your father. So yeah, he is biologically my father, but not really my father, right? And you're kind of just confused about this and confused about that. And They don't identify as male or female. And one of the kids only partially accepts the fact that he's in that meeting while you're talking to them. So these are really kind of like silly discussions. So all of these discussions are very low level. They're not interesting, right? So what you found, for example, between with the Mu'tazila and etc. Mu'tazila, they came along and they asked very clever questions, like genuine problematic questions. So they were bid'ah, but it was kind of useful in that you ask a genuine question. Like it's a clever question. That's a good question to ask. Imam Shafi came along and he asked really important questions. There's tension between people on a really important level, and that's really fruitful. Whereas this is kind of just silly and just like kind of they're very low level questions, if that makes sense. Right? Kind of it's just there by la a loud noise has made an imprint on people, and so you now have to kind of ferret it out. A lot of these things are just like it's really like a non-discussion. So anyway, alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We don't always have a you know it's like imagine you're going to go teach tajweed in the class and then people are like I object to tajweed. So you could have taught all these people tajweed and they could be reciting Quran on a daily basis with proper tajweed or be memorizing or be teaching, right? And now 5 years later you're still trying to explain to them why there's tajweed. So nobody really cares why there's tajweed, do they? No one's going to ask that question. It's just there. And there's no debate on it and just leave it. They don't need to know the technicalities. They don't need to know this. They don't need that. They don't need to know all the problems. And there are problems with tajweed. There are issues, academic issues to talk about. But they're just comfortable that, yeah, I can trust the ulama. Khalas. But you come along and shake the trust in the ulama, suddenly now we're going to waste our time. Right? And it didn't take one session or two sessions. It took 500 sessions, years to just get to the point where you can just actually sit down and do tajweed. Right? That's the exact analogy. And this is this quote from Al-Awza'i, right? He said that it's reached me, perhaps a hadith or something else. Imam Al-Awza'i of the Salaf, he said that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants evil for people, He wants bad for them, He makes them just engage in debate. All they do is sit there and argue. وَمُنِعُ وَالْعَمَلْ, and they're prevented from doing anything. They just sit there and argue. So debate is useful. It is part of one's amal, right? Debate is part of one's amal, one done properly with the right intention, etc. But most of the time, it's just a waste of time. What did you do? Because it's not a fruitful debate, right? As Imam Shafi said, I never debated with anybody who was intelligent except that I beat him. I beat him in the debate. And I never debated with somebody who was not intelligent except that I lost. Because they're just kind of like silly. And there's just like like you don't, you're talking to somebody about a book, you realize they haven't even read the book. You're talking to somebody about, I don't know, some things like, what are you talking about? Well, they don't know, like they don't actually understand what you're saying. Right? So it's an issue though. Okay, khair. Let's go on to page 102. I'm skipping a lot of things because not really. You have to read every single thing here. We can see the general idea. So 102. Oh, that's where we're supposed to be anyway. Let's read this again because it's just useful. Right? And so this damage is so widespread that, even if you quote a hadith about tawassul, people will be like, oh, it's shirk, right? So it's ajib, right? So here it says in Sheikh Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab's letter addressed to the people of Qasim. I believe this is Qasim with a sin, not a sad. Allahu Alam. Thought it was Qasim with a sin. It looks like it's a sad here. Qasim. Allahu Alam. He strongly rebuked those who linked him to imputing disbelief, takfir, upon those who performed tawassul through the righteous. He said, Sulaym ibn Suhaym invented things against me that I have not said, most of which have never even crossed my mind. From among them is that I impute disbelief upon anyone who performs tawassul to the righteous, and that I impute disbelief upon Al-Busiri, this is the author of the Burda, right? The Burda, Mawlaya salli wa sallim da'iman abadan ala habibika khayra khalqi kullihimi, right? This is a poem that's recited from Morocco to Malaysia, across the world, for a long time. I don't know how long, last 400 years, 500 years, maybe more than that. So Imam Busiri is a student of Abu Hassan al-Shadri. Um, so I'm saying that I'm saying because it says Ya akram al khalqi man liman aludhu bihi, right? Which says so on the the line of the poetry. There's various lines of poetry that people might find objection to in this poem. It says Ya akram al khalqi man li. And aludhu bihi, right? He says, "Oh, best of creation." Apparently, that's shirk to say that. Who else can I seek protection in on Judgment Day? Right? So it's like, no, don't seek protection in Allah on Judgment Day. Seek protection. It's shirk to say that because you should only seek protection in Allah. So yeah, on Judgment Day, where's the whole ummah gonna, where's the whole world gonna go? Everyone's gonna go to Prophet Muhammad. So they're not going to be told by him, hey, don't come and ask me that shirk. Obviously, right? We all know the hadith. That's what's going to happen. Anyhow, apparently that's shirk as well. And that I've burnt the book Dalail al-Khairat. So again, Dalail al-Khairat, again a book from Imam al-Jazuli, Moroccan sheikh, who wrote this collection of salawat on the Prophet ﷺ. That's divided up over into 7, and they recite it in over a week of salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And apparently it's shirk, or it has shirk stuff in it. And again, the problem is not whether or not it has shirk in it. The problem is that here's a book that everybody has accepted for a long time. Like I say, we think on the Burda has like, I don't know, ridiculous number of commentaries, something like 10,000 commentaries or something like that. Like one of the books that has the most commentaries in the world. So there's a ridiculous amount of commentaries on it. And then suddenly the Ummah has accepted it, and suddenly these statements are now shirk. Right? So it doesn't matter if Imam Busiri is a believer or not. So we have no problem with that. We have no problem with somebody saying something that's shirk. The problem is that somebody should write something, and then 500, 600, 700 years later, this should become widespread everywhere, and everybody accepts it, and nobody has any issues with it. And then all of a sudden, the Ummah now changes its mind. Right? Imagine if, for example, the whole world said milk was bad, right? Or oxygen causes death. Right? It's like ridiculous. My response to all of this is to say, glory to my Lord, this is a manifest slander. Another statement of his in support of this is found in another essay that he sent to the people of Al-Majma'a, wherein he said, if this is clear, then these issues for which he rebuked us, some of it is clear slander, such as when he said that I impute disbelief upon those who make tawassul through the righteous, and that I impute disbelief upon Al-Busiri. Then he said, my response to this is to say, glorified are you, my Lord. This is a manifest slander. So, how useful is this statement? Now we have to understand that the attitude of the Wahhabi movement is revisionist in itself, is rebellious in itself, right? So when you come along and tell a Wahhabi, well, actually, your Sheikh Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab didn't say that, that doesn't mean that much. It is useful, but it doesn't mean that much. Why? Because the whole point is it's anti-authority. The whole spirit is anti-authority, right? it is anarchistic in its nature. So that's why it's very much like and akin to the Khawarij thing. Why were the Khawarij always killing each other? Because it's anarchistic in itself, right? Why do they do that today? And they're anarchistic in themselves. So there is a academic anarchism in it, in that it doesn't matter what he said. We're saying this, right? And that's why it will tend to split into groups very, very easily. Okay, so Twasul through his relics. So now this is complete shirk. Look, basically you're worshipping idols. So you've taken something that's blessed from the Prophet ﷺ, and then you're worshipping it. Again, this is the argument. It is established that the companions, it should have a capital C, Allahu Alam, used to seek blessings through his personal relics. This seeking of blessings only has one meaning, and it is performing tawasul unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, oh Allah, I ask you by this thing. I don't believe that the relic itself can do this or do that. This is because tawasul occurs in many different ways and not just one. Uh, do you see it feasible that they perform tawasul through his personal relics and not through him? Is it correct to perform tawassul through the branch, something that's secondary, and not through the asl, something that's primary? Is it correct to perform tawassul through a relic that has no nobility, grandeur, or honor except due to its owner, Prophet ﷺ? Only to have someone come along and say it is not allowed to perform tawassul through him, right? That doesn't make any sense. Right? So again, quite key question you ask anybody: when you do sujood to the Kaaba, are you worshiping the Kaaba? No. So what you're doing is tawassul, meaning you're using turning your body, fulfilling these rituals by and venerating this thing as a way of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you're not worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what would be the key difference between a mushrik and a muwahhid? Right? The difference between a pagan and a monotheist is that the pagan worships the Kaaba itself. He physically does the same thing, but his aqidah is different. So this is the key thing. It's aqidah, the issue is not did you say this or did you do this? Right? Somebody who worships the Kaaba, even if he doesn't worship the Kaaba, is already a mushrik before he even does sujood to the Kaaba. Whereas somebody who believes in who does worships Allah is a believer in Allah and a muwahhid, even if he doesn't do sujood to the Kaaba. The primary texts that have been cited in support of them are abundant, etc., etc., etc. Here's example. Umar al-Khattab, when death was approaching him, being extremely eager to be buried next to the Prophet ﷺ, sent his son Abdullah to go to seek the permission of Lady Aisha for that, radiallahu anha. On hearing this, Lady Aisha announced that it was she who wanted that place for herself. She said, "I wanted it for myself, and uh, I shall prefer him over myself in this." Abdullah went to his father to bring him the glad tidings, whereupon his father said, "All praise belongs to Allah. There is nothing more important to me than that." Right? So wanting to be buried next to the Prophet ﷺ. What is the meaning of the eagerness of Umar and Aisha? Why was being buried close to the Prophet ﷺ the most beloved and important thing to him? Right? There is no explanation for that, save that it was tawassul through the Prophet ﷺ. What are you trying to seek? You're trying to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through means of being close to the Prophet ﷺ. Take Sulaim, who cut the spout of the water jug that the Prophet ﷺ drank from. So and it said, "It is now with us," right? We have this thing that he drank from it, we want to keep it, right? The companions used to contend with each other in taking one strand of hair from his head when he cut it. Take Asma bint Abi Bakr, who preserved the cloak of the Prophet ﷺ, said, "We wash it for the benefit of our sick and seek healing through it." Right? Take the ring of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, it was guarded after him by Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman. Then it fell away from him into the well. All of these hadith are established and authentic, as we shall mention, etc., etc. Right? So these are these points here. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. I don't really want to read every single thing. Um, skimming through the chapters here. This is an interesting story. So the story of Al-Utbi and Tawassul. So the Imam Al-Hafiz, Sheikh Imad al-Din Ibn Kathir, so this is Ibn Kathir said, a group among them, such as Sheikh Abu Mansur As-Sabbagh, this is the great Shafi scholar, As-Sabbagh, in his book Ash-Shamil, have mentioned the famous story from Al-Utbi, saying, as I was sitting by the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, a Bedouin Arab came and said, Peace be upon you, O Messenger of Allah. I have heard Allah saying, if they had only, when they were unjust to themselves, come to you and ask for Allah's forgiveness, and the Messenger of Allah had asked forgiveness for them, they would have found Allah indeed oft returning, most merciful. So I have come to you asking forgiveness for my sin, seeking your intercession with my Lord. Then he began to recite poetry. O best of those whose bones are buried in the deep earth, and for whose fragrance the depth and the height have become sweet. May I be the ransom for a grave, that which thou inhabit, and in which in which are found purity, bounty, and munificence. The Bedouin left, and sleep overcame me, the person who's watching this, and I saw the Prophet in a dream. And he said to me, O Artabi, run after the Bedouin and give him glad tidings that Allah has forgiven him. The story was narrated by Imam an-Nawawi in his well-known book Al-Idah. Right. So again, you say, Imam Nawawi was one of us. So what they'll do is they'll make claims like Imam Nawawi was on our side, but he made this mistake. So and so was on our side. They're not on your side. There's all these things that don't make sense to you. So there's all these books here you can read about Tawassul, etc. It goes on and on and on. So again, this is obvious things like, oh, but you should only seek help from Allah. Yeah, I know. But everything else is just through a means. So when I say, hey, can you turn the light on? I'm not worshiping you. This is something that's blatantly obvious. Um, mention some of these things. Here's another objection, right? Is it idolatry to seek from, is it shirk to seek from somebody, something that only Allah is capable of doing? So again, it's a very basic discussion we've already spoken about. Only Allah is capable of doing anything. So they say, oh, you can't, for example, Ya Rasulullah, cure me. So only Allah can cure you. Yeah, I know. So we already know that. I'm just asking the Prophet ﷺ to make dua for me or to make a miracle happen for me. That's all. Right? A miracle is done by whom? Allah. Right? And so it's again, it's a silly discussion. It's a silly discussion. Right? From the other false claims that are held, firmly by those who impute disbelief upon those who perform tawassul through the Prophet ﷺ or seek from him. In their statement, the people request things from the dead prophets and the righteous that only Allah is capable of doing. Right. So notice it says the response is that this is a faulty understanding of what the Muslims have been upon since the time of old till now. The people the people only request them to be a means unto their Lord in fulfilling what Allah has asked. Okay. So we've already had a whole discussion about the nature of agency with the Mu'tazila. The Mu'tazila, they saw that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invests his power into people, right? That Allah, in order to be just, has let go of things and lets us choose and makes us little creators of our lives, right? And that's how he gives us free will. And we are the one who create our actions. This is how the Mu'tazila said things, right? So this gives us proper free will. And therefore, Allah is not forcing me to do good or bad. And therefore, Allah is not unjust if I do something haram, right? And they label us as insane. They would say, you Ahl Sunnah, you guys are crazy. You think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally sends people astray and literally creates their good and bad actions and then literally rewards or punishes them for them, right? So they look at us as crazy. So we've already had this discussion. We already know that Allah is the creator of all actions. We already know that. Just like any Muslim knows that they don't actually worship the Kaaba. So again, it's a very silly thing to say, right? It's a silly thing to say. But yeah, it's said. So also they think that Allah can do some things and we can do anything. We can do some things, but Allah can do everything. That's not true. We can't do anything, right? We're not capable of doing anything. So that's not, the premise is off, right? You can ask somebody to say, Sheikh, please make dua for me, don't. But you can't ask somebody to do something else. Like if you ask somebody to do something that they can't normally do, it's shirk, right? That's not true. Um, Okay, and we did all this thing. It's obvious. So again, we're just saying the same thing again and again and again and again and again. We mentioned that Muhammad didn't say that. Okay, part two. Um, okay, so let's talk about his reality of humanity and the reality of his isthmus, the barzakh. Let's just skip to that. So again, things that go ahead, Asad.
Sure. I don't know if you're aware of the group called Relics in India.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, so I'm not really well versed in their Aqidah, but there is some sort of controversy regarding their belief of the Prophet that I'm not really sure. They attribute, it is supposedly alleged that they attribute some things to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is not actually an attribute of his, like Hazir Nazir or something like that. The knowledge of unseen. We all know he has the knowledge of unseen, but the extent of it. Uh, do you know
Yes, so
what we
again,
were referring to?
these are low level discussions. So the Baralvis and the
Uh-huh.
Deobandis are Maturidis, right?
Yeah.
They're Maturidis. There's no issue about that. They are both Hanafi groups, they're both Sufi groups, and they're both Maturidi groups, right? And so the discussions are non-significant. So what you generally find
Okay.
is you will
Mm-hmm.
find that the Deobandis will say we disagree with some statements that you're saying, but we don't label you as kuffar. Whereas some Baralvis will say no, we do label you as kuffar. So they will say, for example, Baralvi is Ahl Sunnah, etc., and Deobandi is something else, right? And they could why? Because there's a particular statement that one Deobandi scholar said that was inappropriate, and inappropriate means shirk or kufr, right? And so, which is not necessarily the case, right? So it's kind of being made bigger than it really is, right? So like Sheikh Habib Omar, he spoke about this. He was like, this is yeah, we're the same groups. We shouldn't label people as kuffar. Yes, somebody says something that has somebody uses an example or refers something in a certain way. He should have had more adab in the way he said it. There's a difference between bad adab and shirk and kufr, right? And so, anyway, so that's that issue there. But they don't, if you ask them, like, what do you mean by this? So they have certain words they're going to use, certain phrases they're going to use, but none of it, like, you say the Prophet, let's say, for example, you believe the Prophet can knows everything and can do anything. So, yes. Okay. What do you mean by that? So, well, I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can teach him anything and can make him do anything. Okay. Thank you very much. Is that what you mean?
So it's a
That's what you
non-issue,
mean,
basically.
right? Like you believe, so do you not believe? So do you believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could make the moon create universes? Yes. Is that shirk? No. So that's what we mean when you say you are able. You are enabled. Able, when we say able, we mean enabled. When we say no, we mean taught. That's what we mean. Like, oh, okay. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not taught anything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not enabled. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able. We are merely enabled. Does that make sense?
Just so it's just semantics, right?
Semantics. But many people
Correct.
just, again, it's like, imagine someone says, don't click the enter button because I don't want to go inside the house. You start looking at them. You're like, which house? The house in the screen. He's looking at them. I'm lost. The enter button will not make us go inside the house on the screen. And they're like, yeah, but it says enter. And you're like, Subhanallah. I'm talking to somebody who is very confused, right? Or return. That means go back. Or shift. I don't want to change anything. I'm not changing anything, right? I don't know. Like, there's just huge basic concepts that are lost on them. Right? So his blessed urine, Hassan ibn Sufyan in his Musnad and Abu Ya'la and Al-Hakim and Daraqutni and Abu Nu'aym, all narrated from Ayman, who said, the Prophet ﷺ got up one night and urinated in a bowl. During that night, I rose in the state of thirst, so I drank whatever was in the bowl. In the morning, I told him what I had done, after which he smiled and said, surely you will never have pain in your stomach. Right? Abdul Razzaq narrates from Ibn Jurayj, the great Mufti of Mecca, who said, I was told that the Prophet ﷺ, says a mursal, a gap in the chain here, had a wooden bowl in which he used to urinate, and it was placed under his bed. Once he searched for it and found it was empty. He then asked a woman named Baraka, who was a servant of Habiba, who came with her when she returned from Abyssinia. He asked, where is the urine that was in the bowl? She said, I drank it. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, O Yusuf, you will most certainly be healthy. This Yusuf was her nickname. She never became ill until her kunya. And she never became ill after that day, save the sickness that immediately preceded her death. Ibn Dahiyya said this story is different from the story of Ayman, and this Baraka Yusuf is different from Baraka Ayman. Right? So you'd be like, oh, that's so weird. So you find it weird. That's strange, or that's like that's strange. So now, what does that mean? Weird and strange. It means I have seen people who in my life who don't deserve this level of veneration. and they were given something like this and they didn't like it and it wasn't healthy. Therefore, this is bad. Can you see that? Like there was a sheikh that wasn't that amazing, and people used to like kiss his hands and stand for him, and sheikh make dua for me, and sheikh make dua for me, da 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 da. And it turns out the guy was a crook. Therefore, if the same thing is said about the Prophet ﷺ, it's bad. Can you see that analogy? It's coming. The cynicism comes from somewhere, and the what's it called? The resentment, right? And also the nafs loves it when you are now told, like the less people above you, the better, right? You are now told that, for example, no one else on earth is better than you. Alhamdulillah, the nafs likes it. None of the Sahaba are better than you. The nafs likes it. The Prophet ﷺ is just a messenger. He's not like an amazing person, right? He did bad things like you. He's not that amazing like you. You feel better about yourself, right? The nafs doesn't like to have people above it, right? And then ultimately, you go to the next level and say Allah's not above you either, right? And the nafs loves that. The nafs is now free, right? That's why the weight of iman, right? That weight of iman that people don't, you know. So it's actually it's a whole system. It's a whole system. If you look at, for example, Judaism, right? Judaism is like that. It's like you bring religion down, bring prophets down, and then bring Allah down. Like Allah is not moral. Allah is just powerful. And whether he exists or not, we'll see. Right? The prophets in the Old Testament are not moral, they're just powerful. That's all. Miracles happen, they're given, you know, they win battles, but that's about it. Like there's no such thing as about morality. It's not a real thing. Okay. Find another key thing to look at. Otherwise, he's just repeating himself again and again and again and again and again of things that are very, very obvious. Seeking, so you can read all these things, seeking blessing through his body, through this, through that. We mentioned many of these things. People, jihad being possible for people who saw, and people who saw relics. We will see all these things. Conclusion. Visiting the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, well, let's just do this next week then. Yeah, I turned it off intentionally. I'm just flicking through the book. It's kind of annoying on the video if it flicks. Let's go on to 2:15 next week. And just talk about, we'll make that the last question, or is it going to be 29th then by then? Oh, we have two more. Then we got the Molid as well. So we have two more discussions in reality. We have the issue of visiting the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and visiting the grave and more on relics and then on the Burda itself. Inshallah. Okay, any questions or queries? Okay, sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhanallah wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.